This is He Who Moans, Doctor Who reviews. I only complain because I like Doctor Who and I care. And I overanalyze too much because, whatever, it's just my opinion. Well, I don't seem to have been the only one who thought that Mummy on the Orient Express was a complete breath of fresh air, but since we've now got a second one with Matheson, there's suddenly a lot more riding on it than initially expected. Was the last one a fluke? Can he pull it off a second time? Well, fortunately, I found out that apparently Mummy on the Orient Express was actually the second script that he wrote, and it was this one that they were initially impressed with enough to give him another, so, here's hoping. Though the trailers have looked kinda dodgy to me and made me apprehensive to be excited about it, but maybe that's a good thing since usually when I'm anticipating Doctor Who is the time when it sucks the most. But still, the trailer for Midnight back in 2009 I thought looked uninteresting and rubbish, and that turned out to be one of the best entries from New Who. And last week Matheson proved himself capable of taking elements of Voyage of the Damned and doing it well, and this one looks like it takes elements of Fear Her. Yeah, people trapped in graffiti sounds a bit similar to me. Yeah, sounds a bit gimmicky, and as said, the trailers have had me worried, but I'll see if it surprises me. Wow, me being flippant and cynical again it seems. Flatline was in every way a definition of what Season 8's mission statement was supposed to be. Yeah, remember what that was supposed to be now? Okay, I wouldn't call it perfect, and I didn't like it as much as last week's one, but it was still pretty great. What I'm really enjoying about Jamie is the way that he repatchworks elements that, let's not kid ourselves, we have seen before, but makes it feel fresh and interesting enough that you don't get bored by it. Because Flatline is probably one of the most interesting episodes we've seen in a long time, because it just kept throwing interesting visuals and ideas at me, so I couldn't predict how it would end up. Which is precisely how I want to experience Doctor Who. There were no moments here where I'd say, well, that's clearly going to mean that this is going to happen. Well, aside from a couple of bits. Yeah, this is probably one of the bigger reasons why Moffat's had so much backlash recently. We've seen the sort of things that he does by this point repeated ad nauseum, so we kind of see all of his twists and turns coming. Like, look at Asylum of the Daleks. People have asked me how I could think that revealing Oswin was a Dalek was predictable, and the answer is... And you didn't think it was predictable? For one thing, every single scene with her, the word eggs was mentioned for one, as in exterminate, and pretty much every line from her might as well have read, maybe something shocking is going to get revealed about Oswin. And it was the first thing that I thought of. And like with River turns out to be Amy's baby, again, Moffat went with the very first twist that I guessed. I successfully guessed it because this is just the sort of thing that Moffat does by this point, and I could see it coming. Not his fault maybe, but by the 3rd year under his rule and the 7th year since he joined the writing staff, yeah, I have seen it already and so I'm bored by it and see it coming. And it's the reason that Doctor Who should be chasing new names and new perspectives to stay fresh as often as possible, and Flatline has totally pulled that off, and is further proof that Jamie Matheson was a very, very good idea. Yeah, let's not get those ideas though. I won't get into that here. I'm going to discuss the future of the show in an editorial at the end of the series. What Matheson's managed to do here is create an episode with a loose relationship with logic. That may or may not sound like an interesting approach depending on what sort of thing you generally look for in Doctor Who, but I think this line sums up my reaction to Flatline perfectly.
Could you not just let me enjoy this moment of not knowing something? I mean, it happens so rarely.
I couldn't predict where Flatline was going, and I like the feeling of the unknown. To me, it sort of feels like a bunch of Monty Python sketches stitched together. Really, this episode has a list of ideas like the TARDIS goes tiny and fits in Clara's handbag. Clara has to pretend to be the Doctor with him giving her instructions in an earpiece. There's creatures living in the walls, everything starts turning 2D for some reason. While these ideas on paper would seem diffuse, weave them together and it creates a ludicrous effect that just somehow fits perfectly within its own context. Just like a Monty Python sketch.
Did you say mattress?
Well, a little, yes.
I did ask you not to say mattress, didn't I? Now I've got to stand in the tea chest.
Really, Clara walks in pretending to be MI5 investigating this murder case, gets handed a huge sledgehammer from her handbag.
Apparently they're in the walls.
Really, that's Monty Python sketch logic at work there, strung effectively into a plot, and whatever words you use to describe this episode, boring and predictable would never be two of them. It's the sort of thing that I love Big Finish for. Anyone that's listened to Big Finish add talking space ducks into the proceedings just because they can, note, really. We'll know what I'm talking about when I say turning things on its head is way more interesting than anything Moffat's done recently. It's escapism. It's weird. And I really appreciate it when Doctor Who plays fast and loose with the word reality. Big Finish are more at liberty to do that, of course, because of the whole no visuals thing, but here we have a simple idea about playing with dimensions to allow for some silly sci-fi lunacy. It's absolutely the sort of thing that I've been asking for, so I'd be ungrateful if I didn't appreciate the style that this episode was going for. It was highly necessary. You know another thing I'm enjoying from Jamie? No-nonsense pre-credit sequences. Episode starts. Right, bloke's phoning the police, suddenly he's in a wall. Oh my god, how could he be in a wall? There's no attempt to crowbar an entire episode's worth of build-up into 10 minutes worth of pre-credit sequence like we had every bloody week last year. Just, here's a teaser for our concept this week. Bam, done. Easy. Just whatever you do, introduce an interesting idea. And this is an interesting idea to me. Ludicrous, yes, but again, Python logic. Right, a bloke's trying to buy a license for his fish. Some sheep are trying to learn how to fly. Composer's being interviewed on an art program, but the interviewer won't stop talking about his shed. TV game show based on blackmail. Basically, just do anything to stop the viewer from yawning and looking at their watch. And that's what he's done here with stuff like the astonishingly brilliant bit where the Doctor's walking the TARDIS off of the train track with his hand. Yeah, while I'm on that, it's probably one of the most technically impressive episodes of Doctor Who. The production team seem to have been really inspired by this script's playing fast and loose with logic. Some people have been saying that it's just cheap CGI in the end, which, well, it's different, isn't it? Would the creatures in this episode have been anywhere near memorable if they were just another bunch of bland CGI shape monsters? But their movement and art style, just as someone who loves stop motion, that's why these things are a lot more visually striking to me than big amorphous CGI blob monster or let's shove a fly in a boiler suit. Really, this is the production team using their initiative to create something memorable, and I think that they've really pulled it off here. Though again, given a second part of this story, there could have been a lot more done with it. This is an idea that I really wanted more from. Speaking of which, while it makes perfect logical sense after what happened last week, where, while still there and actually doing stuff important to her character for a change, Clara kinda took a backseat in exchange for the story, whereas here she's in the foreground of the plot while the Doctor takes the backseat. Good sense of balance, yes, but since lots of us still don't really like Clara that much in spite of her actually feeling like a real person now, yeah, that was always going to be a gamble. Clara did pull it off though, but she's still way too self-satisfied a character for me to come round to actually liking her. Yeah, she's kind of turned into Rose Mark II in that respect. Jenna Coleman acquits herself admirably, clearly because she's over the moon at finally being handed a script that actually lets her do something, and as I said last time, she's become active rather than passive, and making her the central focus for an episode makes absolute perfect sense after that one. And Clara does have some standout moments this week, and giving her a chance to prove herself as a competent grown-up, rather than a massive whinge bag, that was a great move in my opinion. My ultimate problem with it though was just by the end it didn't really feel to me like she'd learnt that much about what it means to be the Doctor, which kind of appeared to be the point of doing this in the first place. It mostly seemed to me like the Doctor was the one that was learning what he sounds like when he makes shit up as he goes along without thinking of people's feelings. Which is what Clara learnt about him last week, rather than say in this situation Clara learning that sometimes you have to be a bit of a douchebag to get anyone at all out of danger alive. We didn't really get that much in the way of Clara empathising with what the Doctor has to be in order to save people in dangerous situations. Really, at the end, it was just her bleating for a pat on the head that got me going, yeah, that shouldn't be the main thing she takes away from this, should it? Again, this may be a result of 45-minute syndrome trying to get them to end the episode quickly with a bit of a slapdash heartfelt moment, but I just felt we could have had something more than just, I was a good doctor, wasn't I, Doctor? Yes, Clara, you were a good doctor. Like, for figuring out to test pilot whether a female Doctor would work, it didn't exactly do much with what it means to be the Doctor in the end. I just felt that conclusion from what we were trying to say here was a bit too simplistic, and it could have done with a couple of extra minutes. And before you say it, let me do it for you, all together now. Maybe they're saving it for later. But yeah, it just made me wanting something a bit deeper from this ending, and again, maybe 45-minute syndrome. While I'm on characters, the other characters I felt were kind of barely present. While yes, the graffiti aspect of the episode works, and the community service workers are an obvious fit with it, I just didn't feel like they were, characters. Like last week's one had a massive and lovely cast of guest stars, and this one, while yeah, they fit with what's happening, aside from Riggsy, they all felt like either caricatures or completely expendable. Like, when a character's clearly there for the sole purpose of getting killed, it kinda takes me out of it a bit. And since this episode has a lot more interesting stuff to look at, they kinda just ended up being further victims of the damned 45-minute virus infesting the nervous system of New Who, which really does need addressing and needs to die. An extra 15 minutes. Please, it's not too much to ask, and it would probably shut lots of us up. As said though, Flatline does sacrifice the extra details of the story for playing about with dimensions and, of course, offering Clara more opportunities to prove herself, so it's understandable that some bits of it would get lost somewhere. As is, making an episode where Clara's the main focus with strange Python-esque twists to keep me interested is a neat idea, and it made for a far more interesting watch than most episodes that we've seen in the last couple of years. So yeah, while Flatline isn't the best episode ever, it's certainly one of the most interesting. And I personally think that Mummy and the Orient Express and this one should have come a lot earlier in the series. It would have established that yes, we're looking for different things, and we're at least trying with Clara and the Doctor's relationship now. Really, then I probably wouldn't have been as much of a depressing whinge bucket to listen to for the last month.